Coming up on Network Africa, of Zimbabwe's Air Force, Terence Shiri, who helped oust late President Robert Mugabe, dies at 65. Tanzanians pay their last respects to former President Benjamin William Mkapa, buried in his hometown. Thus, over 60 migrants rescued in the Mediterranean by the Maltese Coast Guard test positive for COVID-19. Hello and welcome to the program. I'm Layo Adegoke. We begin in Zimbabwe, where the Agriculture Minister, Terence Shiri, has died, according to an announcement made by President Emmerson Mnangagwa. The 65-year-old minister died at a private hospital in the capital, Harare. His driver is reported to have recently succumbed to COVID-19. However, it is unclear the cause of Mr. Shiri's death. Now, the retired military general played a key role in a notorious massacre in the early 1980s, a key ally to late President Robert Mugabe. Mr. Shiri later played a key role in the removal of Mr. Mugabe from power in 2017. In a condolence message, President Emmerson Mnangagwa described the former Air Chief Marshal as a longtime friend, a true patriot who devoted his life to liberation and service of his country. Still in Zimbabwe, the United States has summoned the Zimbabwean ambassador to explain comments made about its envoy by the country's ruling party. Spokesperson for Zimbabwe's ruling party, ZANU-PF, had on Monday accused the U.S. of sponsoring anti-government protests in the country, calling the U.S. ambassador, Brian Nichols, a thug. The Assistant Secretary for the State Department's Bureau of African Affairs, Tibor Nagy, termed the comments as deeply offensive, adding that the Zimbabwe envoy had been summoned to explain. According to the chairman of the U.S. Senate Foreign Relations Committee, Zimbabwe was using name-calling, deflection, and misinformation to justify their current economic and political crisis. All right, let's discuss all that's happening in Zimbabwe. Joining us now is Nigel Yamutumbu from Harare. Hello, Nigel. Thank you so much for speaking to us. Condolences to Zimbabwe on the passing of Terence Shiri. Tell us, what's the mood like now in the country?
Well, thanks, and well noted. It's a mixed bag, really, of feelings among the people of Zimbabwe upon receiving the sad news of the passing on of retired Air Marshal Terence Shiri. On one hand, you've got some ruling party sympathizers and some generally within a certain sect really mourning the death of Shiri and then really hurt by the development, as it were. While there's some, particularly on social media, on Twitter, the level of the tone and the level of language that is going on there is disrespectful, to say the least, but people are generally expressing their view around his role in the 1981 to 1982 to 1987 massacres in the Matabeleland parts of the country. He was the commander of the 5th Brigade. There's also mention of the 2008 violence that occurred during the presidential runoff elections and subsequent other violent history of Zimbabwe, and some to them they are shedding no tear. So it's really a mixed bag.
Yeah, and President Emmerson Mnangagwa paid tribute to him, calling him a true patriot. What legacy is he leaving behind?
Well, no doubt he part and participated in the liberation struggle of this country. He was in the command element of the freedom fighters during the liberation struggle. He did join the military and was in the top echelons of power within the military sector for a long time, assuming the role of Air Marshal in the early 2000s or thereabouts. And part of what informs his legacy as well is he was instrumental in the press conference wherein they declared that then opposition leader Morgan Tsvangirai would never rule this country, and that the leadership of the country is a straitjacket. He also was instrumental in the deposing of Robert Mugabe at a time at which quite a number of Zimbabweans really celebrated with the military, and he was also really feted among the heroes of that particular period. But generally, his history will forever be tainted by the period between 1982 and 1987, and also a lot of violence that is attributed to the military in the country will definitely be part and parcel of his history.
Indeed, those were devastating times. And are there plans for his funeral? How does the country plan to honor him?
I think the ruling party, which really confers hero status on individuals, is convening. I think I understand they have called for a press conference in the next hour or so. They should have made a decision on whether to give him the highest honor in this country, which is that of being conferred a national hero. Chances are very high that you'll be conferred a national hero. The state newspaper media has already run a special edition in his honor, which is an indicator the president himself has already described him as a national liberation struggle stalwart. So chances are he will be conferred a national hero status. I'm sure at the press conference, the ruling party is going to then also give us some detail into the funeral arrangements.
All right, then. Thank you, Nigel Yamutumbu, Zimbabwean journalist. Thank you for speaking to us on Network Africa. More than two-thirds of a group of 94 migrants rescued in the Mediterranean by the Maltese Coast Guard have tested positive for coronavirus. In tests carried out on arrival, 65 were found to have COVID-19. 20 tested negative, and a further 9 are expecting their results later. The migrants, thought to be from Eritrea, Morocco and Sudan, were reported to have been at sea for 30 hours before being picked up when their vessel started taking on water. They are to remain in quarantine at a reception center. Now, the group had reportedly set off from Libya in a small boat, and they were only discovered after sending out a distress signal. While still speaking on the migrants crisis, police in France have evacuated about 1,500 migrants, mostly from the Horn of Africa and Afghanistan, from a makeshift camp in a northeastern suburb of Paris. The migrants had been living in tents next to a canal and were given face masks as they boarded buses to be transferred to sports halls, hotels and other shelters. The authorities said conditions in the camp posed the high risk of coronavirus infection. One charity worker said the migrants were exhausted, with some having been evacuated from camp 10 times. Another migrant says the situation is incomprehensible, saying they were put in hotels for 3 months and then returned to the streets. Meanwhile, 3 Sudanese migrants have been shot dead after their boat was intercepted by the Libyan Coast Guard, and they had been returned to shore. The International Organization for Migration, IOM, says that the local authorities opened fire when the migrants attempted to escape from the disembarkation point at Al Khums. The migrants were among 70 disembarking from a vessel that was intercepted and sent back by the Libyan Coast Guard. Now, 2 people were killed on the spot, while a third later died in the hospital.
The International Organization for Migration said today that 3 Sudanese migrants were killed and 2 others injured in a shooting in the Khums disembarkation point last night in Libya, after being intercepted at sea and returned to shore by the Coast Guard. The shooting occurred after more than 70 people were disembarked from a vessel. Staff from the IOM in Khums said that local authorities started shooting when the migrants attempted to escape from the disembarkation point. The injured migrants were transferred to local hospitals, while survivors were moved to detention. The UN Refugee Agency deplored the tragic loss of lives and called for an urgent investigation following.
Well, back here in Nigeria, the Kaduna-Abuja train service resumed passenger operations today, nearly 4 months after services were stopped due to the nationwide COVID-19 lockdown. The railway opened bookings for passenger services this morning with 4 coaches connecting Kaduna to Abuja daily. Railway health officials at the Rigasa train station told our correspondents that coaches and the premises have been decontaminated before resumption of the service. Passengers are also mandated to wash their hands with soap at the entry point, their luggage decontaminated, while the body temperatures are screened before they are allowed to move to the ticket point. In line with social distancing guidelines, the number of passengers per coach has also been cut down by half, while the railway management has made the wearing of face masks and use of hand sanitizers compulsory.
I want to assure you that according to the NCDC protocols on the prevention and containment of COVID-19, the Rigasa railway station have done its best, and we as the professionals have been here since yesterday, standing for 24 hours to ensure that the needful is done. Number 1, what we did and we ensured was done was the decontamination of the train on arrival yesterday, the one that left in the morning. And the second one, which we are expecting around 9:15, as soon as the last passenger they embark from the train, it is also going to be decontaminated. And as you can see here, we have provided the footsteps here, as you can see them, for the social distancing, which is one of the among the protocols. Also, the NCDC has told the Federal Ministry of Transport that no traveler will be allowed into the train without wearing his or her face mask, as well as holding a hand sanitizer. That has strictly been adhered, and passengers are here with them. And in the absence of people, let's say, not knowing or getting this information about having to be with their hand sanitizer and face mask, we have made provisions and through the manager of the rail station to get some accredited people. He wishes to come here so that they will be stationed somewhere to sell the face mask. And we as professionals, we will inspect such face masks to ensure that they are of quality and that they wouldn't pose harm.
Muslims in Algeria are preparing for the annual Eid al-Adha holiday despite the lockdown measures to curb the spread of coronavirus still largely in place as infections rise. Growth in almost all sectors in the country has been weakened since the authorities imposed a lockdown earlier this year aimed at curbing the spread of COVID-19. However, the government says that a new social and economic revival plan is due to be announced next month. Well, away from COVID-19, former Tanzanian President Benjamin William Mkapa has been buried at his home village in southern Tanzania. His family says Mr. Mkapa died of a cardiac arrest in the early hours of Friday last week. For some Tanzanians, they believe President Mkapa will be remembered as the founder of a modern Tanzania because of the long list of national institutions launched during his presidency, from the country's revenue authority to the Anti-Corruption Bureau. He was also the first Tanzanian leader to rise to power through multi-party elections in 1995. After handing over the presidency to President Jakaya Kikwete in 2005, Mr. Mkapa went on to start a non-profit organization which leads efforts to fight HIV/AIDS in the country. Still ahead on Network Africa. Mali's Prime Minister visits key opposition figure in efforts to resolve the ongoing political crisis in the country. Welcome back to the program. The International Federation of Journalists is hailing the repealing of Sierra Leone's criminal libel law, calling it a great victory for freedom of information. The law, which meant people could be jailed for libelous statements, was repealed last week. Before that, people could be jailed for up to 3 years, whether or not what they wrote was true. That's because the law did not allow truth as a defense unless you can prove that publishing the truth is in the public interest. Campaigners have been arguing for more than a decade for the law to be repealed. Among their complaints was that it was actually used to gag journalists and repress independent and opposition voices. The government in Mali has reached out to a key opposition figure in efforts to resolve the ongoing political crisis in the country. According to a statement quoted by local media, Mali's Prime Minister Boubou Cissé has invited influential Imam Mahmoud Dicko to bring his movement into the unity government. The Prime Minister is also said to have visited the Imam at his home. Mr. Dicko is a prominent player in the ongoing anti-government movement that's calling for the resignation of President Ibrahim Boubacar Keïta. West African Regional Bloc, ECOWAS, recommended the formation of a unity government to resolve the crisis in Mali, a proposal the opposition had already rejected. Now, the president appointed a slimmed-down cabinet that included the prime minister and 6 other ministers to work towards a government of national unity. No statement has been made on the other proposals by the regional group in ECOWAS, like the resignation of 31 parliamentarians whose election was disputed and the remodeling of the Constitutional Court. Let's discuss some security matters here in Nigeria. The Community Policing Advisory Council is officially in place in Oyo State, southwestern Nigeria, following its inauguration by the Governor Seyi Makinde. It's a 22-member committee led by the Alaafin of Oyo, alongside other traditional leaders, heads of religious bodies and security agencies in the state. The Inspector General of Police was represented at the event by the Deputy Inspector General in charge of Research and Planning Force Headquarters, who noted that the structured involvement of all stakeholders will make grassroots policing more effective across the country.
The wisdom of the elderly, the advice of the clergy, the energy of youth and tactfulness of trained officers are all being harnessed to make community policing effective. Community leaders in Oyo State, southwest Nigeria, are putting differences aside to fight a common enemy, crime, which shows itself in different forms. A 22-man committee led by the Alaafin of Oyo, Lamidi Adeyemi III, will drive the process to end all criminal acts within the state, with the active participation expected at community level.
On behalf of other members, that we know our responsibility and we do our best to satisfy the aspirations of those who put us in this position now. We do everything possible. Because it's an honor. Among the millions of the citizens of Oyo State, few of us are selected for this task. And it's a task that must be done.
In the lead-up to this process, measures had been put in place by the state government to make all things available for a smooth takeoff.
This initiative, we will make it work, while we're still hopeful that one day Nigeria will get to that state of maturity where the Constitution will be amended and then we'll have a state police.
The Inspector General of Police is represented by the DIG in charge of Research and Planning, and he brings a message of optimism from the force headquarters that community policing will provide a sense of belonging to all.
It's about policing from the grassroots, from the locals. We're going to involve the hunters, the local farmers, all those that are very important, the iyaloja, the traders. We need information, processed to intelligence that we can now use to apprehend, to prevent rather than being reactive. This is the concept. Everybody is being carried along.
All the state government is looking forward to now is for all hands to be on deck to ensure the community policing initiative gets the buy-in of the grassroots. Bukola Uriowo, Channels Television News.
Egyptians are trying to conserve water in the country as researchers at a university create a prototype canal that lowers levels of evaporation. Now, this canal could also boost agriculture or produce energy. Take a look. Researchers at Egypt's Nile University have designed a prototype canal that lowers levels of evaporation to conserve water, which can then be used to boost agriculture or produce energy. By partially covering waterways with plastic floaters equipped with solar panels, engineers working on the project estimate that it can save millions in cubic meters worth of the precious resource each year. Over a period of 8 months, researchers built a solar canal modeled after the Toshka Valley project in Upper Egypt, a network of lakes built in the 1990s that aimed to irrigate large swaths of arid desert for agricultural use. Under this model, lead researcher Dr. Shireen El-Baradei estimates saving 4.5 million cubic meters of water per year from covering only half of the main 50-kilometer-long Sheikh Zayed Canal in Toshka to preserve water quality. It can also generate between 500 to 1,000 kilowatts of renewable energy annually.
This project could be implemented over parts of the Nile, especially in parts where there is no navigation, or replace them in a way that does not disrupt navigation.
Water evaporates due to a multitude of factors, including temperature, air pressure, and the rate of airflow over the body's surface, and has over the years been compounded by rising temperatures due to climate change. Egyptian officials say that there is currently around 570 cubic meters of water per person per year. Hydrologists consider a country to be facing water scarcity if supplies drop below 1,000 cubic meters per person per year. Egypt's figure is expected to drop to 500 cubic meters by 2025. That is without considering the impact of the Grand Ethiopian Renaissance Dam, which Egypt says will lower water levels further, though Ethiopia says it has taken the needs of Egypt and Sudan into account.
The construction of the Renaissance Dam in Ethiopia is one of the problems facing Egypt currently, as well as other countries. Reducing the water evaporation levels, if implemented in all canals in Egypt and other big water streams, will save up to billions of cubic meters of water.
At a relatively low cost, scientists at the university believe if applied to the Nile River, the solar canal can save between 2 and 3 billion cubic meters from the country's existing 55 billion cubic meter share each year. And that's where we end Network Africa today. Thank you so much for watching. I'm Layo Adegoke.